Hello, thank you so much for dropping by this video. To anyone who's new, a warm welcome to this channel. This is part 3 in a series. Um, I haven't really titled it yet. I'm thinking of calling it the Authentic Teachings or the Actual Teachings of Jesus Christ. So this is part 3, Deepening Your Spiritual Life. um, so So I'm assuming that people are familiar with this topic. And if you're not, please do feel free to post your questions afterwards or check out some of the other videos. So, so many different traditions, many, even to some extent, different religions point to the fact that underneath it all, we human beings are actually holy. You could say, there's different ways to say this, that our true nature or our inner nature, our soul, is actually pure, is actually divine. However, if you look at your own behavior and other people's behavior, this can be very hard to believe. All of us have done things that were wrong, and some human beings throughout history have done things that were horrifically wrong. So, how is it possible that inside of us there's an inherent goodness, an inherent divinity, and yet human beings act so horrifically sometimes? And we don't even have to look very far. As we go throughout our day, every single one of us makes mistakes, sometimes small, sometimes big mistakes. Every single one of us has done things that have hurt people, sometimes in a small way, sometimes in a very big way. So, how on earth could we be inherently divine? How on earth could the core of our being be sacred or good, given that we make so many mistakes, given that we hurt so many people, much less how much we hurt ourselves? Well, there's a very simple answer to that question. And that is that um, as a soul that has a capacity to, and I dealt with this in the last video, but as a soul with the capacity to receive energy and receive thoughts, we can literally take in untrue thoughts. We can literally take in negative energy, which then literally compels us to act and behave in ways that are contrary to this inner purity. So let's sit with all this for a little bit. And the foundation of this course is this very simple practice of taking in natural life energy. It's very simple to do. Please sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards. Back in a relaxed, upright position, if possible, not leaning against your chair. Then close your eyes and separate yourself mentally from all problems, all burdens, all worries, all illnesses. And then have the will, the intention to take in this natural life energy that can heal and observe your body, having the will, the intention to receive that while observing your body. Noticing what you feel. having the intention to take in the good, this good energy, which then can remove all the things that are obscuring this inner goodness. So, so we have an inner core which is divine or good, but which can be covered over through untrue negative thoughts and negative energy that we've taken on. While that core remains divine, sacred, good, it can be covered over. And so through taking in this life energy, it um, begins to reveal or uncover that inner goodness. Now, there's another way that that inherent beauty can be covered up. And interestingly enough, it comes from listening to other people. I say that with a smile because right now, here I am, a person talking to you, telling you that that many, many, many of our problems come from listening to other people. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, specifically, if we have this inner inherent goodness and we listen to other people instead of listening to that, from a religious point of view, you could say listening to other people instead of listening to God, well, that's going to create a whole lot of trouble. And of course, many people, think they know what's true, but actually don't. And as children, we listen to parents and teachers and religious authorities. We listen to them as if, kind of in essence, as if they're God, that whatever they say is true, when actually a lot of it isn't true. So, with these very innocent, open ears and heart and soul, we as children take on many, many untrue beliefs. Um, this was made so clear to me by a very beautiful yet painful story of a young girl who she was born deaf. And so she wasn't able to hear all the things that other people were saying. And so she just stayed connected to this inner goodness. And everyone just loved her because she just radiated, even when she was 8 and 9, she just radiated all this love because she hadn't taken on all the untrue beliefs and untrue thoughts of other people. And then there was a medical breakthrough that allowed her to regain her hearing, or not regain, to gain her hearing. She was born deaf. And then she was able to hear all the things that other people said. And oh my gosh, it was traumatic for her. She'd never heard racial slurs. She'd never heard insults. She'd never heard the idea that some people were good and some people were bad. And very soon, this innocence and radiance and glow that she had was lost. And she actually became quite sad and quite depressed because she, in essence, had stayed connected to her inner divinity, to her goodness. And she saw that in other people. But in taking on all these other untrue negative thoughts, she really lost her sense of connection to that. And it was quite a healing journey for her to regain that. So the thing is as someone standing here talking, sharing, I'm not saying don't listen to other people, but we absolutely cannot listen to other people as if they are speaking the truth. We have to listen with discernment, with everything that everyone says, including me. I'm not standing here on a pulpit saying what I have, what I'm sharing is the absolute truth. Instead, what I'm saying is what I'm sharing, I'm absolutely convinced of. And please take the time, search your soul, and find out for yourself if what I'm saying is true or not. Hopefully, my intention is that everything I say helps people get connected with that inner knowing, with that that inner divinity that I started speaking of, but even maybe more so with mm, that sacred instinct within us that knows what's right and what's wrong, that knows what's good and what's not good, and just naturally moves towards that which is healthy and harmonious. So let's spend a little time, reflect on this, continue to take in some more of this good energy, noticing what you feel, intending to take this energy in. Listening deeply inside yourself. So, so here I am offering a course on spiritual things, and um, so anyone on the spiritual path is going to encounter two things. They're going to encounter spiritual teachers, and they're going to encounter spiritual groups. And what I feel that I just absolutely must say is that both of those things can be helpful and they can be harmful. So I've talked a little bit about um, how to uh, relate or interact with a spiritual teacher, and in essence, that's partially what I'm doing. I'm being a spiritual teacher. I don't consider myself a guru in any sense of the word, but I am sharing. I am teaching on spiritual topics. And so, what I've asked you to do with me, and I would ask you to do with anyone, especially a spiritual teacher or a religious authority, is not believe what they say just because they say it. Just because someone with a certain credential says something doesn't mean it's true. We really have to learn how to tune in to the part of us that knows what's true and what's not true and follow that. Now, what about groups? Well, one of the things we're doing is taking in um, healing life energy, and that can be very powerful to do in groups. I love doing that in groups. My own experience is that the energy seems to get magnified when doing that, and that's wonderful. However, one of the problems with groups is that, um, well, let me back up a moment. So, if you know you're each you're an individual. I'm sharing this video and lots of people are watching it, but you, the one person who are watching it, let's say you and I have a conflict of some type, or I want to do one thing and you want to do another thing. Well, we can have a conversation and we can find a win-win. However, in groups, what often happens, especially in spiritual groups, is there come to be a set of rules. And the rules tend to not have a lot of wiggle room. And so to participate in the group, often you have to conform yourself to the rules. Now, again, uh, and this can happen in relationship. Two people are in relationship, and one person says, "Hey, my way or the highway," and the other person says, "Well, I feel like I need this person, so even though it doesn't feel right, I'm going to do it." That's giving your power away. That's stepping away from the part of you that knows what's right and wrong. And this thing, however, in groups, um, it can be much harder because in a one-on-one, two people can talk and hopefully find something that works for both people. But groups can take on an energy of their own. And worse is many spiritual groups claim to be the exclusive group or the one true way. And often part of, if not a lot of, what they're teaching isn't actually true. So, just as with listening to people, when interacting with a spiritual teacher or with a group, you have to be very mindful of not giving away your power. Because by looking to a spiritual teacher, now, certainly a spiritual teacher can help, there's no question, and certainly a group can be helpful. But what this practice is really about is having a direct connection with nature, with life, with God, with the divine. And for that, you don't need a group. And you don't need to submit yourself to a group or submit yourself to a spiritual teacher. So let's take a little time and sit with all this, continuing to take in this divine energy, noticing what you feel, having the will to take this in. Just keep coming back to observing the body. So, mystics throughout the ages have pointed out that, contrary to all our habits, the one thing we're actually dependent on is God, the divine, life itself. Now, I say contrary to our habits because most people think they're dependent on having a house, they're dependent on a relationship or a job or pretty much anything other than life itself. And if we really reflect on, um, you know, to depend on something is to rely on something. And the question is, what is reliable? A job's not reliable, a house isn't reliable, a relationship isn't reliable. I'm obviously not against any of those things or telling someone not to, but what I am saying is, what do we want to put our faith and trust in? What do we want our our foundation to be? What is the thing that we can depend on? Now, I have a house, and I have friendships, and I have work. So I'm not saying not to do those things, or that those things are somehow bad or wrong. But none of those things is completely dependable. But there is something that is. It's been called different things by different people throughout the ages: ultimate reality, the truth or truth itself, love, life, God, existence, being, spirit, some supreme reality that is all around us, that governs existence, that is in charge of and governs the universe. And that reality, which is always present, always closer than close to us, even when we can't sense it, that's the thing that ultimately the spiritual path is about learning to put our faith and trust in, because it's the one thing that's reliable. So let's sit with that, continuing to take in this vital life energy, asking if what I'm saying is true. Is there, some people here may not even believe in this reality. I didn't until I experienced my first healing. But let's really ask ourselves if there is such a reality, and if so, is it completely dependable and reliable? Noticing what you feel, So, what I'm advocating is that as opposed to relying on groups or another person, but to rely on this fundamental reality, on life itself, that's the place, it's the only thing that's in essence is worthy of our full and complete trust and reliance. Now, here's one of the paradoxes of the spiritual path is that if a person has, through this capacity to receive negative thoughts and negative energy, if a person has taken on too much evil, too much negativity, that they actually need a very pure being to help them out. Why is this? Because at a certain point, the person is cut off from, disconnected from this divine life energy that we're taking in. And without someone to help them take this energy in essence, they just stay stuck. So um, this idea, you can find it again, cross religion, cross culture, cross philosophy. The need for a spiritual helper. In some traditions, you call a savior or a guru. Um, and I advise extreme caution with it in terms of, um, no teacher that's really true is going to make you give your power away. Sadly, this idea of a spiritual teacher or a guru has been deeply, deeply abused by people who weren't really worthy of that level of trust. And this boils down to one of the things that we as human beings don't like to look at, and that is, what do we need? What I've come to realize, and again, this idea is grounded in the realization of many, many teachers across tradition, cross culture, is that whatever you call this ultimate reality, I tend to call it God, but I'm comfortable with many, many other words. God or spirit are kind of my current favorite words. Is that we actually need this reality. Now, look at a few of the different ways. One of the most basic ways is this life force itself. We human beings tend to think that these bodies of ours run based only on food and water. However, again, it's a very ancient idea. Many cultures have said actually that this life force that we're taking in right now, this energy is one of the fundamental aspects of being human. If you think about it, without sufficient life force, our lungs wouldn't be able to even take a single breath of air. But it becomes even more clear when we take a look at this idea of good and evil, which we looked at last time. And that is what this negative evil force is very strong. All you need to do is look at your own negative habits. I need to just look at my own negative habits, but much less the state of the world or just the state of other people to see how powerful this force is. And the question is, can we overcome it on our own? Can we overcome it without divine help? Without the help of this higher power? The conclusion I've come to is no. For myself, I've tried on my own. I spent most of my life trying to live, in essence, live without God. And from my point of view, what we see happening on the earth today is just a giant experiment of people trying to live without God, doing their own thing, going their own way. When actually, many wise sages in their own ways have said the essence of life is aligning ourselves with that higher power. Some different words, different language, aligning, being guided by, harmonizing with, connecting, and then living from that connection, living, being guided, and living from a place of inspiration. That's what's natural. That's what we actually, to live a happy and healthy life, not only do we need to be connected to this great reality, but we also need to be guided by it. But once again, please don't take my word for any of this. Please find out for yourself if this is true. So let's spend a little time in silence, taking this energy in, noticing what you feel. Now, on a very primal level, there's another reason why we need this connection with the divine, with the sacred. Now, imagine yourself in nature, or imagine how you feel after a really good meditation. Hopefully, you're feeling it right now. Contact with, connection with, communion with this sacred ultimate reality leads people to feel whole, as does time in nature. This feeling of fullness, just feeling happy for no reason at all. But what happens without that? Well, without that feeling, people feel that they need, oh, I need this, I need that. Ultimately, that leads to what's called consumerism, where people are just constantly buying and consuming things to try and fill this emptiness. But of course, none of it works. And then that just sets the stage for addiction, to where this for a need for something actually becomes a harmful compulsion that takes one on a downward cycle. Now, contrast this with the feeling of connection with the divine, this feeling of peace and wholeness, that everything's okay. In essence, that we have everything we need. And so, without that feeling of communion and connection, we human beings are constantly seeking and not finding. Now, you may have noticed that I use different names for this ultimate reality. Well, the thing is that a name is just a name or an idea is just really like a diving board. Like, let's say our goal is to go swimming. We use the diving board to get us into the pool. The goal is connection and communion with the divine, alignment, being filled up with this good feeling, and ultimately to be connected to that goodness inside of us. And a particular name, a particular philosophy, a particular idea is only useful, it's only in essence true if it connects us to God. Back to our metaphor, the diving board's only useful if it gets us into the pool, to where we're swimming in connection and communion with the divine. That's why I'm not so attached to a particular name. And people are a name of the divine, of God, the ultimate, the supreme. And it's okay if you are. And I go through phases where there's like, oh, this name, this has got to be it. And that's okay. People have the right to forge a relationship with this supreme reality in a way that makes sense to them and resonates to them and works for them. So let's sit with this intense need that we human beings have to feel whole, to feel connected, and what happens when we don't have that with the divine. And let's also sit with this idea that ideas and names and so forth and so on are really more functional than they are that they're not the truth. They're pointing us to the truth. Observing the body, noticing what you feel. Taking in the good. So, this feeling of wholeness is precious beyond words. We spend so much of our time seeking to feel good, and many of the things we do help us to feel good temporarily, but they don't fulfill that deep need we have, a deep spiritual need, which again ultimately is deep natural need for communion with life, with the sacred. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining in today, those who joined in live, and a very warm welcome to anyone who's new to this channel or this topic. As human beings, we're so used to seeking conditional happiness. Oh, if I get that job, I'll be happy. If I get this house, if I move this place, if I. But there is an unconditional happiness that is available. And finding that unconditional happiness, that's true freedom. Because then we're not dependent. Then we become dependent on the one supreme reality, as opposed to being dependent on people, places, and things. And it's fine and natural to pursue relationship and job and goal, but to pursue it from a place of wholeness and from a place of communion with the divine. It leads to a very different way of life. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining in. Thanks for saying hi, Alex. And I wish everyone a day full of communion, full of good feelings, and reliance on the divine. Thank you so much. Take care.